Yeah, thank you so much. That was great introduction, and thanks so much for putting this together. I just have to say, I mean, the Views community and everyone should take a look at all these wonderful offerings up here. Uh, Sorry, it's not the best display. But last year, working with Views, and the sad fact that I haven't been able to attend meetings over the last year has really been a downer for me, because this really was a fecund soil to be working in and speaking with everyone who participates in the meetings. This project was sort of cooked up in January when I was speaking with Qian Qian and then working a little bit with Yan Ru. I will have to tell you right now, I didn't get very far into the Mediterranean. All right, we're more medieval. I didn't get as deep as I want to do in Dungba script, but I'm trying to work on that. So it's work in progress. So work in progress. Let me get this up here. Maybe that'll progress. But the real sort of anchor to this is back in when I was working on my PhD. I was really interested in, and this is my new book. If you're interested, you can go and buy it. It'd be wonderful. I'd love it if you did. But just doing ethnospatial analysis of art and architecture in colonial Mexico. And I worked on, this is a site, San Andres Calpan, the facade of one of the corner chapels. You can see John the Evangelist as an eagle. He has a scroll in front of him, and it's notoriously known for being in the reverse. I don't have a good image of it because I couldn't really get a very good image of it in time. But it's often been depicted as these indigenous artists just didn't understand the language of script enough, and so they reversed it, and the sort of scroll furls out in front of the eagle. In this sort of mixed, muddled way. And it's always sort of sat with me wrong. So I continue to be interested in the way that speech is represented in manuscripts. And so this is just one of the sort of touchstones for me. The book goes into much more detail into local heritage and place identity formation. But today I'm looking at words as they are depicted in three different forms, morpheme, essentially, that are going to cross some boundaries. I took the notion of engagement I should engage with other language groups and societies. And so I'll be looking at some European, Asian, and then the Americas, sticking really close to home with my Nahuatl Mixtec script. I'm focusing primarily pre-modern, wanted to highlight visual elements. We talked a bit today about the visual elements being so crucial in understanding the hieratic and the Egyptian script in one of the talks. And so just getting back to that. And then the notion of gesturing. I might be doing a lot of gesturing when I'm talking today too, so because I like to talk with my hands. So just following with some of the literature I've been looking at, the notion that in medieval scroll work, that it is equated to the specific context, making it so you understand, making the person, the act legible that's in front of you. A scroll will be connected to people. It'll be touched, something you hold, something that unfurls in front of you out of your mouth. It's a scroll that's attached to you to give some sort of physical, tangible element. And others have sort of explored this notion, looking at how it's a didactic element. I'm not going to, move too far away from that. Sorry if you wanted to get an image of that, I guess. But just the notion that Marcoux brings up with the banderoles being something that that in posthumous displays in French burial tombs, how it is placed around the figure, where you would pause at the base of a tomb and you would be able to sort of legibly understand the person's life through the biblical Latin texts that are replicated on them or around them. This is just the passage that Camille is talking about here. The notion that from the Aeneid, when we have Lavinia's letter given to the archer, the notion that the scroll is kind of falling down and around, moving around people. It's a linear setting. We talked a bit about linear and the way in which you might read these scripts. And so when I look at Dungba script, when I look at Nahuatl script, it's interesting, some of the parallels, some of the ways in which they're distinct. Just another example of how words are kind of falling out of people's mouths. It's an example of the French tombs that I just mentioned. The script itself being clutched in someone's hand, and then the legible material running around the outside. Another notion is the sense of the hand being the gesture of communicating, being able to speak to an audience, raised finger, and generally having the finger and thumb pronounced, the way in which you know someone's speaking. Just keep that in mind. I'll touch back on that later. I'm just highlighting that as a little silly dotted circle. In Bury St. Edmunds, you can go and stand at the foot of John Barrett's 15th century tomb, and you can see how he clutches at, or this cadaver clutches the actual script, how it has weight, it bears down on the cloak that's covering the body closely. So now, my little jaunt into Dungba. I apologize how terribly I will do it this next phase, but I'm so thankful to everyone who's in the room who's worked on the database, because I can jump in and start to learn and do my best at burying myself in this work. But there are resources available to you if you're interested in looking at this script, and it's been made much more legible now for non-experts like myself. And I'm just highlighting key examples of how speech and sound are highlighted in the script itself. The symbol for speak, to shout and yell, we can see a distinction in how maybe sound pierces with these sort of added ornaments. And then noting in the actual script themselves where we can see people speaking, and then also the notion for a priesthood chant. Just highlighting the various ways in which people can are shown delivering words, and how the words move out from the head, from the mouth. Essentially, they do have there is a depiction of the mouth itself, so it's essentially coming from the profile of the mouth itself. When we turn to looking at Dungba depictions of sounds, natural sounds, and how artist scribes are depicting variations in sound, this is helping me rethink how Nahuatl is written. These are totally separate writing systems, right? So something about engaging in new ways of visually listening to things can be helpful across, a wider span, a human condition that might be capturing things. So the roar of a bull having three wavy sound marks coming out of the mouth, the wild horse neighing and having a sort of waving serpentine-like glyph that comes out of their mouth, and then the badger, the hog badger, the sound that they make, and I'll touch on that in a second. Compared to other sounds that make a sort of roaring, echoing sound, the conch shell, when blown, will be a sort of trumpeting, deep sound that's going to sound a bit like a bull roar, perhaps. The wild horse, a higher pitched, fine sound, maybe like the sound of a horn, and then other instruments that might move across different boundaries. The gourd flute having this multiple echoing sounds attached to it. The flute itself being able to produce these distinct notes out of each of the holes of the flute. And then the harmonica producing a sort of neighing-like curve, like the wild horse. When we get to, and then also the crow, to make a call like a crow, similar to the neigh of a horse, a high-pitched noise. And then I'll need Dungba experts to talk to me about how the two birds in a conversation may equate to a sort of polite discourse, because this is something that's been debated in Nahuatl script for some time. But then when we get to this sounds coming out of the wet sounds coming out of the badger and the hog, I mean, this is the sort of sound maybe associated with a crude or rude sound, defecating, diarrhea, these noises that are sloppy and slurpy and things, the same sound in Nahuatl. The pitzot, this pig, makes a sniffing, sort of snorting sound that's wet and sloppy too. I don't have a good depiction of that sound. So I wonder if it would have been something similar with these ornaments that sort of make the same type of ornament as a shout or a yell. figures that have maybe some more elevated status. The notion of having to be able to have a call, potentially like a tiger head, or like a wolf is able to yell. Humans producing the yell as well. In Nahuatl, I'm going to be focusing now on ways in which yells, singing, and words that sound words might show us some interesting things to compare with. The best resources that I use for my research is Stephanie Wood's work. Oh, I must have cut off something there. Um, but this is an online database, her Nahuatl vocab dictionary. There's a lot of attestations in Nahuatl, in English and in Spanish from the colonial period and before that you can link to her visual lexicon of Aztec glyphs, jump right over and actually see the visual elements parsed out for you with a lot of her helpful guidance in understanding. So if you're not an expert, like I'm not an expert in Dongba, you can jump on here and start to become one. So just wanted to highlight that as a resource. My purpose in doing all this is to understand the visual writing elements that are in this manuscript that sits just a couple of feet, hundreds of feet from us now. It's in the Cambridge University Library. It's part of the Bible Society collection. It's a 16th century Nahuatl Latin lectionary. It has Nahuatl text with Latin rubrications setting off each of the biblical passages. It was made at a critical time in Nahuatl when people were learning how to adopt Latin alphabet. And you can actually see it in the volume itself where there are corrections being made using what I call Aztec Tipex. But I've actually found this in dozens of other colonial manuscripts, and we know it's in pre-colonial manuscripts. So I'm trying to track this down. I call that project the Great Aztec Cover-Up. So we'll see how that goes. Wait for that one. But in this text, it's actually there are several lectionaries that we have access to. None of them include the very handy depiction of Nahuatl morphemes that are very close to what we see in some pre-colonial and early colonial manuscripts, some of what Kasia was talking about yesterday. And in my opinion, they're amplifying the biblical text. Just to highlight the hands that are working in the text, this is based on my paleographic work. We can see roughly distinctions of how many different people were participating in the manuscript. And that top one, that green one, it's the one that actually uses the Mesoamerican glyphs, right? So we have a conch shell, chalchihuit, so a jade bead, and another conch shell, and these are depicted in codices in a similar way. Parsing these out one by one to understand the manuscript better. It's only this firsthand, so maybe this author had a closer connection to the writing system, wanted to keep it alive and actually inform Christianity in an ethnogenic, in a sort of new way of thinking about the new faith that they converted to. So I'm cross-examining the text with other materials and then looking at colonial materials as well, the archive itself. Here are all the glyphs that I've identified, individual glyphs that I'm working on, and material that I'm covering. And today I'll focus on these three glyphs that are a paired set of three glyphs that I'm arguing are speech scrolls or vocative sounds, similar to what we see in some of the material that we had a chance to look at. They're kept alive in colonial manuscripts, and I'll show that in a second. But I'm really interested in how how sound is represented, how these materials are spoken and then depicted in writing in these texts, but also how they might have a deeper, stronger resonance, how they might connect to shouts and shouting and commands. I'll be talking a bit about the notion of a triplet, a triplication of sound, and then the concept of an emanation, be it smoke or be it air, or possibly be it speech or song coming from a conch shell in this depiction here. And so the key Nahuatl terminology that one we often will use, ilhuia. This is a common way of looking at the language itself. Sorry, I'm just getting my notes back up. And giving you the definition there. but the notion of having a conversation, taking counsel with someone, it's something that you know that you're telling someone. It is a verbal applicative verb that is going to be applied to the object, direct or indirect object prefix. And in this way, you are conveying knowledge. So there's a direction, there's a intent, a vector that it's related to. Speech scrolls go very far back in the mural work of Mesoamerica. This is, maybe one of the oldest. There's another one that's a bit earlier of a bird sort of sounding out sound. But here at San Bartolo in Guatemala, we have what essentially could be some of the earliest signs of someone evocating some type of elevated language in the two figures speaking to the mountain deity here. Little jade beads or gems maybe near their mouths. But then also keep in mind the fingers, right? These hands, the notion of the Christian sense of holding your hand up and to speak. It's something common in Nahuatl as well. The way that we gesture with our hands is interesting to me, and it'll link together with Kasha's talk from yesterday by happenstance. So the notion of a single speech curl emanating from someone's mouth, or how it might color someone's talk. I won't go into depth. We have lots of examples of this, these curling words that move out from people's faces. And then when we move to the colonial period, it's not as if these scripts die off or disappear. They are used, and this is from the Matricula de Huitlacinco, where we see it's a census record, and it has people's names in both glyphic and in Spanish gloss. So that's one way we get sort of a Rosetta Stone type function. So I have figures like Diego Tetlaquilo, who his name may mean stone carver, most likely, or stone painter, scribe, maybe, the way that you might analyze those glyphs, compared to another way in which this person's name is written, a similar type of convention, the use of 3 scroll words to make Iwisol, which is the name for a feast day or celebration. So this person, Diego Feast Day, compared to, that sounds like a fun name to have anyway. But so we could just end it there. I could say, I got my 3 speech scrolls there. This means Huia, and that's it. It's either a feast day to celebrate some special feast in the Christian passage, right? It's amplifying the Christian message by having these 3 speech scrolls in this illuminated letter I, this rubrication. But wait, is there more? Could there be something more there? So the notion of having a triplicate of sounds is also prominent in Nahuatl writing and writing systems, and I'm trying to amplify that here. Speaking of application, we have the word zatzi or tzatzilik, the notion of being able to produce a shout or a bay. We have in the Spanish here the bay of a sheep, the growl of the grumble of a bull, the song of a Castilian rooster, the calls, right? These loud shouting calls is what early Spaniards compared this term to when they first arrived. We have depictions of what are generally referenced as military governors that have 3 speech scrolls coming out of the eagle's mouth. And this could be this tzatzili sound. It's different than other sounds that animals might make. The warbling bird seen before here it uses this different type of more chirpy-like sound with gems around it, the cha-cha-chalaka sound. This replication of cha-cha-cha may indicate the triplicate that I'm talking about in the way that there are 3 scrolls here with little gem beads added to them. Tzatzatsilia is another triplicate that you can do to have 3 sound morphemes in front of you. So focusing on this notion, we do have records of these military general figures, but we also have depictions of pronouns, personal names. So Cuauhtlatol is the ruler of Tlatelolco at one point. He is usually depicted as an eagle with a speech scroll in front of him. And Gordon Whitaker, a specialist in Aztec glyphs, has identified the notion that the eagle, because it's the suffix actually. So it ends the word. In a sense, it's supposed to be, he speaks like an eagle, not another way in which you might read it. But the eagle's head stands in for the eagle's body, quautly. It also can be the notion of the beak as being having the strength. There's the notion of eagle warriors in Mesoamerican glyphic writing as well, and in their culture as well. So the idea, though, that it's attached to 3 glyphs here in the Florentine Codex, in multiple places, the authors, I think, are trying to tell us there's more there, there's more authority there, more prominence they want to show in depicting these figures. And we can see other examples of this in the Mapa Quetzalcoatzin at the Library of Congress that I was able to go and look at. But Stephanie Wood has also done work on this on her website. She highlights this portion up here in the top corner, a particular site, a pool, and in the gloss itself, we have the word ehekat, so wind, or some sort of emanation that might mean that this is a place, a very windy place. But in my reading of the glyph with the 3, the triplicate, it's a forceful place. So maybe a strong wind or a loud wind, a roaring wind that might be taking place there. That's just showing you the triplicate of the bird sound. So I'm going out a little bit on the limb there, throwing that term there, but just other examples of triplicated speech scrolls. When a woman goes to place the maize in the pot to prepare it so that it'll float, the best maize kernels are going to be the ones you're going to plant or that you're going to eat. There's a whole moment in which she's talking to the maize and speaking to it, almost reprimanding it. You better be good. You better do well, right? The notion of a mother when the Cihuateo, these sort of demon-like feminine maybe quality figures that are coming down from above that are going to torment you at these certain times of the year. Well, the mother, the mature woman, the knowledgeable woman, she reprimands her children to get inside. And I don't want to ever be at the end of a mother's angry reprimand. It's terrible. But yeah, definitely get your rear inside. You can see someone's rear already in there. When Malintzin and Cortez, or Hernan Cortez, arrives, he has his translator there. She's speaking for him. He's generally known as Malinche, La Malinche, that they don't use his name, they use her name when talking to him because she's the mouthpiece for him. Well, when they first arrive, she reprimands the Mexica. So the people of the Aztecs, Hernan Cortez come to Tenochtitlan. He wants goods, he wants food, he wants all the accoutrement that any conqueror ought to have welcomed into the city. They're not getting it for them, so she's shouting down from the top of the temple, reprimanding the Mexica. Where's all the goods? You need to bring all the goods. In the account, the Mexica are terrified. They use the word mahuistli, this notion of terror, worry. This Mexica is shouting right back at her, 3 strong shouts. I don't think he's terrified. He's reprimanding her. Why should we give you these things? Maybe, potentially. There's also the notion of song and having a cadence, a long, drawn-out cadence. The performer, the drummer, song also in the connection with deities who are going to have specific scrolls. Here we have a sort of Europeanized version of Ome Tochtli, this sort of drunkard, this sort of Bacchalian, oh my gosh, I lost the word. But here he has these sort of looser scrolls, but the more maybe traditional have a little tag to the base of them. But it's a sort of song or chant that's taking place. So now I get to the last bit. The notion of sharp sounds, breaking things in colonial manuscripts, and proclaiming the divinatory. Now I'm calling it divinatory, but I was calling it this proclamations, right? These proclaiming things. The woman breaks her mano. It has a spurt of what looks like blood, and it has been registered as blood. But it's also the notion of something making a shocking splatter notion, right? There may be sound locked in this this glyph. I know there's a specialist here, so we have to go with what she says. But then also the same notion here of a replication of this scene where the grinding stone is actually broken and spurting forth with this notion. Trees snapping and releasing liquid, or then also getting back to this idea of how a conch shell can emit sound. The drummer being the coyote figure standing at the drum and playing a conch shell. So music, cadence. Yeah, so just to get to the main point and wrap up here. When we get to one of these agricultural scenes in this almanac-like text, I was fascinated, and I had been working on looking at the sound marks in this particular scene and throughout these 4 passages. But it also highlighted the fact that when these gods or priests dressed as gods, because sometimes they might be a shipla actually donning the deities. So it's a knowledgeable person, a sabio, trying to tell people what they ought to do. Well, he is pointing to the date, just like Kasia said. And I thought, well, this is a way of having speech represented. It's a form of speech, maybe something that's using that curly Q shape, like the hand is, this 2 fingers pointed up and 3 fingers pointed back. A way of replicating a speech scroll itself, maybe, potentially. But in the same passage, the same moment, this is the one agricultural scene where you can actually see emanations coming from the drilling ceremony that's happening, jeweled flowers sort of spouting forth, and then emanating essences, which I'm considering 3 sharp sounds coming from this particular moment. So in any case, that's the sort of pitch for that argument. And we see this in other colonial documents when we see the artist, the painter, painting her, doing her tlaquilo work. We have the sign for day on the left, King Kunz, in this little manuscript here, and the sign Ilhuia, the notion of also day, but also a feast, of celebration, but a different type of knowledge, 2 types of knowledge, account maybe, and more like earthly things. But she is actually, when we look close, also indicating with her hand that she is proclaiming to the Lord what to do on this day. It's not just that she's writing for him. She's not just a painter. She's an advisor. She's proclaiming with effort, with vector, with force. Okay, so these are the key takeaways. I'm kind of a little bit on time, and it was a lot of information. But the main note is that by doing this type of larger, sort of breaking my sort of comfort zone, it feels like I'm getting closer to understanding what it means to unfurl sound a bit, what a yelling sound might mean in different cultures at different times, and how important those indicators might be. The notion of, I'd like to hear about what everyone thinks about the notion of medieval scrolls being attached to people and having sort of a linear way of reading, even though you can read them in different ways. And then otherwise, just the idea of how we might find sound in other writing systems, and if there's ornamentation that goes along with them to amplify these texts. That's my